Dear friends, why did a Hafiz Quran girl turn into an animal while reciting the Quran? Why did such a painful punishment from Allah befall her? What mistake did she make while reciting the Quran? Dear friends, stay with us until the end to learn about the sin she committed, as this incident is a lesson and a warning for us all, especially for our mothers and sisters that are in a remote area of Pakistan. Abdul Rahman lived with his wife Zainab and their one-year-old daughter Nafisa. Abdul Rahman was a very pious and kind-hearted man. Every morning after far prayer, he would catch fish from the river and sell them in the market to feed his wife and daughter. Abdul Rahman's wife, Zainab, was very greedy and hard-hearted. One day, Abdul Rahman told his wife that he was not feeling well and thought of staying home to rest instead of going to the river. His wife angrily replied, "Sometimes you have a headache, sometimes a stomach ache. You always find excuses not to work." Abdul Rahman insisted that he was genuinely unwell, but his wife retorted, "Fine, don't go. I won't do any housework today either. I'll just rest." Trying to calm her down, Abdul Rahman said, "All right, don't be upset. I'll go to work." When he cast his net into the river to catch fish, he noticed a basket with a baby inside. Abdul Rahman took the basket out of the river and looked around, but no one was there. He thought, "I'll take this baby home, otherwise it will die here." The baby was crying loudly, so Abdul Rahman hurried home and told his wife, "Zainab, look what I brought." Hearing the baby's cries, Zainab asked angrily, "Where did you bring this baby from? What's the problem? Why is there so much noise? And why did you come home early? What new trouble have you brought now? When will you go to the market and bring money?" Abdul Rahman replied, "You only care about money. Look at this innocent baby left in a basket by the river." Still angry, Zainab said, "If someone left the baby, why did you bring it here?" Abdul Rahman replied, "What are you saying? If I hadn't brought it home, should I have left it to be eaten by fish?" Zainab, still furious, said, "Let the fish or some animals eat it. I will never keep this trouble in my house." Hearing this, Abdul Rahman became very angry and said, "Enough is enough. I won't listen to you anymore. You've had your way for too long. Now listen carefully. This baby will stay in this house, and we will raise it along with Nafisa. Don't talk to me about this again." Seeing her husband so angry for the first time, Zainab became very scared and reluctantly agreed to keep the baby. Abdul Rahman lovingly named the baby Fatima. As time passed, Nafisa and Fatima grew up. One day, Fatima asked Abdul Rahman if she could go fishing with him. Abdul Rahman laughed and asked, "Why, my dear? Do you want to learn how to catch fish too?" Fatima replied, "Yes, father. I want to become a fisherman like you." Abdul Rahman told her, "You're still too young. Play with your sister Aisha for now. When you grow up, you can come with me." At that moment, Zainab came and said, "If she wants to go, why don't you take her with you? It will make your work easier." Abdul Rahman replied, "If I need to teach Nafisa and Fatima anything, I'll do it myself. You don't need to worry about it." Zainab didn't like Fatima at all, but she was forced to tolerate her because of her husband. One day, Abdul Rahman suddenly passed away. Nafisa and Fatima were devastated by the news of their father's death. Zainab hugged Nafisa and said, "Your father's time with us has ended. Now you must be strong." Crying, Nafisa asked her mother, "Mother, how will we manage without father? Allah has taken away our shelter. How will we survive?" Her mother replied, "Fatima will take your father's place and catch fish." She learned it from her father. Hearing her mother's words, Fatima cried and said, "Yes, mother, I will work in father's place." "Don't worry." Still harsh, Zainab said, "Stop showing so much affection. You will go to work. Who else will?" After her father's death, Fatima's life changed completely. Zainab made her do all the housework and also catch fish and fetch water from the river. But she was always given very little food. One day, when Fatima went to fetch water from the river, she cried, remembering her father. "Father, why did you leave me? I miss you so much. Now I realize that no one in this house loves me except you. After you left, Mother doesn't even give me proper food. I pray to Allah every day to bring you back. Is that not possible? What should I do? Please show me a way." But she received no answer and returned home, crying. As soon as she arrived home, her mother angrily said, "So, the queen has returned. Does it take this long to fetch water from the river?" Still crying, Fatima replied, "Mother, the pots are heavy when filled with water, so I walk slowly to avoid spilling it." Her mother said, "Stop your nonsense. You don't do any work properly, and you eat so much." Fatima replied, "Mother, you don't even give me half a meal, and it's always stale food." Hearing this, her mother became very angry and said, "How dare you talk back to me? I'll teach you a lesson." She beat Fatima so badly that her head started bleeding. Nafisa watched and smiled. The next day, after Fajr prayer, Fatima cried a lot while praying to Allah. Then she went to the river to fetch water. Holding her injured head and crying, an elderly man passing by asked her for water. Fatima quickly brought water and gave it to the elderly man. "My daughter, you are very good. You gave me water to drink, and in return, I want to give you something." Fatima said to the elderly man, "I don't need anything." The pious elder said to Fatima, "My child, don't you need anything at all?" Fatima replied, "No. My father taught me that we should help others without expecting anything in return." Seeing the blood flowing from Fatima's forehead, the pious elder asked, "My daughter, what happened to your forehead?" Hearing this, Fatima started crying again and told the elder her entire story of sorrow. After hearing Fatima's story, the pious elder said, "My daughter, don't worry. Allah is with the righteous. I live in a hut near this river. It pains me to see that your mother treats you so cruelly." The pious elder then said, "I will pray to Allah for you. From now on, whoever makes you cry, whoever troubles you, whoever causes you pain, their voice will always sound like a pig's. And Allah will give your voice such a power that whenever you recite the Quran, whenever you open the Quran and read it, everyone who hears your recitation will forget their sorrows." After saying this, the pious elder went back on his way, and Fatima started walking home. On the way, she felt like reciting the Quran. As soon as she opened her mouth, the recitation of the Quran began to flow from her lips. She was happy hearing her own recitation. All the birds that heard her recitation became silent and engrossed, forgetting their sorrows. When Fatima reached home, her mother angrily said, "So, the queen has returned. Where have you been for so long?" Fatima, smiling, replied, "Mother, today I met a pious elder by the river. He is a devout servant of Allah. If he touches the soil, it turns into gold. Her mother, hearing this, said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Is that even possible? Go and do the housework. Look, the whole house is dirty." Fatima went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. While washing the dishes, a glass slipped from her hand and broke. Her sister, who was standing nearby, immediately slapped her, and Fatima started crying. As soon as tears came to her eyes, her sister Nafisa's voice changed. When she opened her mouth to speak, the sound of a pig came out. Her mother, seeing this, was shocked and asked Fatima, "What have you done to my daughter?" Fatima replied, "Mother, today I met a pious elder by the river. He prayed to Allah, and this happened. He said that whenever someone makes me cry, their voice will sound like a pig's instead of a human's." Her mother, hearing this, remained silent but couldn't stop her actions. She didn't hit Fatima, but she threw her out of the house. Fatima went outside and lay down under a tree, crying and reciting the Quran. As soon as she started reciting the Quran, she forgot all her sorrows and pains. Fatima's voice reached the ears of a prince. The prince fell in love with Fatima's voice and followed her to her home. Meanwhile, Fatima's mother had taken her back home. The prince knocked on the door of Fatima's house, and her mother came out. The prince asked her mother, "Who was reciting the Quran here? That voice drew me here. I have fallen in love with that voice. Who was reciting Allah's words with such a beautiful voice?" Hearing this, Zainab said, "That voice belongs to my daughter Nafisa, whom Allah has blessed with such a beautiful voice." The prince, hearing this, said, "I want to marry your daughter. Whatever you ask, I am ready to do. Whatever amount of money you want, I can give you everything. Just marry your daughter to me." Hearing this, Zainab agreed to marry her daughter Nafisa to the prince. However, Nafisa's voice was like a pig's, which was very bad. When the wedding time approached, the prince's father said to Zainab, "I want to hear your daughter's voice. I want to see what she recites." Hearing this, Zainab and her daughter Nafisa became very worried, as their truth was about to be revealed. Hearing the prince's father's words, Nafisa started crying and wrote the whole truth on a piece of paper. Seeing such a big lie, mother and daughter were arrested. Fatima, seeing the whole scene, went to the prince's father and asked for forgiveness on behalf of her mother and sister. She said, "If you want to arrest someone, punish me. I am responsible for all this because I was the one reciting the Quran." The prince heard my voice. Whenever the prince saw my sister, she would just stand there, and I would recite Allah's words in my melodious voice. The king said, "If that is the case, you must recite the Quran here in front of everyone right now." As soon as Fatima started reciting the Quran, everyone calmed down and became engrossed in listening to her recitation. After hearing the Quran, the king decided, "I will forgive all of you on one condition: if you marry your daughter Fatima to my only prince." Fatima's mother joined her hands and begged for forgiveness from her daughter Fatima for her sins and said, "My daughter, forgive me and your sister. We have wronged you a lot. Today, you saved our lives. Please agree to this marriage for our sake." Fatima forgave her mother and agreed to marry the prince. Fatima and the prince got married. Fatima found a very good family and lived the rest of her life like a princess, always surrounded by servants. So, dear friends, you see how much blessing there is in Allah's words. A person forgets all their sorrows and pains. If you are also troubled by anything, open the Quran and sit down. You will forget all your sorrows and pains. Dear friends, if you like this story, please share the video with your family, friends, and relatives. Subscribe to the channel and write Allah is the greatest in the comment box. Thank you.